We have like storm music now. That's pretty cool. Uh, Glenn, I gotta tell you, hi everybody, welcome to this Storm Watch. I'm Bob. This is
This is
it's
Glenn.
very good, really, really well rehearsed, as everyone can tell. I'm in charge of something we're calling Gray Noise Labs. And Glenn, what do you do in Gray Noise Labs?
So I am leading our detection engineering and security research teams in Great Noise Labs.
Very cool.
Very cool.
After last week's intro music, which that actually our amazing producer and coordinator for Stormwatch created, sounded like Tron music to me, and so I actually got my Tron disc from like where there you go, from like the first like modern Tron movie. There goes my green screen. It's like so cool. Wow, and they makes everything go away. So I'll just go there. So Glenn, what's going on? How was your little weekend?
It was great. Yeah, 3-day weekend here in the US. So that was a nice extension. Normally we will be here on Monday mornings. This week we're here on a Tuesday morning, but that's all right. So how about you? How was your weekend?
I got to see my grandson, so I had a great weekend.
That's awesome. Have a hot dog? Maybe a bratwurst?
A bratwurst. Yeah, we had
Brat-
this glizzy dog. Wow, my green screen is going terrible. Uh, we had a internal contest right now. It's called Glizzy Dogs. I don't know if anybody knows what a glizzy dog. I did not, and I don't think I still know what one is. And I'm kind of morally opposed to hot dogs, so I had to
Okay.
have me a bratwurst. What about you?
I had tacos, so I don't know how that fits into the Glizzy Dog contest.
Continued bitter disappointment in you as a new hire, Glenn. Just letting you know that.
Tacos are
So
always
hey, last week, yeah, we talked about Stormwatch, and we were going to say what might have happened the previous week. Did anything happen last week, Glenn, on the internet?
Yeah, there's a few things that happened, and I know you're sitting on some graphs that were kind of interesting story that the team. I don't know if they stumbled across it. I know we were doing some research and testing out some new tooling internally, and one thing led to another, and then there's like a 300 message Slack thread about everyone piling on to a thing.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people internally and externally saying, like, what the heck is going on? And we were like, oh, well, take a look. And we did. And it turns there was a lot going on. So let's take a look here. So we saw major spikes in what turns out to be components of the Mirai botnet. In case people didn't know, Mirai is still a thing. It's actually one of the primary botnets in the internet. It's got lots and lots of botnet members, and we saw some activity. This is a pretty interesting spike buildup, starting from like around like May 10th, and then hitting us pretty bad last week. Actually, hitting everybody really bad next week, and also continuing through today. And I have dubbed this person or individual or group the Marauder, so I can't pronounce it or anything, because I don't know, they're kind of an idiot. And if you're listening, you are an idiot. I'm really sorry, dude, or dude, like whatever you might be. Um, this is really noisy. It's not very effective, but and you also signaled a bunch of other stuff to our detection engineering team, which I'll let Glenn and I like talk about towards the end of this one. What I wanted to show in here was the two major components, the one being the real tech and the one being a general Metasploit. Nothing particularly bad about either one of those two, except that they were used pretty heavily. So this individual or group was going after the devices that those things can't find. But Mirai, as you can see, is just there all the time. Like we see 30,000 IP addresses a day, just trying to continue to find new members to bring into the Mirai botnet, and or one or more Mirai botnets.
It's kind of the
And yeah,
heartbeat of the internet at this point.
it really is like it's a planted good old configure from back in my day. That's what that shows my age. I mean, we still see config. You can go to the visualizer and look for config and you'll find it. But Mirai has really just jumped up and taken the broad strokes away from everything out there. And I wanted to talk about this one for a little bit because this is what I mean about the person or group being just an absolute moron. This just lit up everybody's IDS. It lit up everybody's event source counter thingy. It actually triggered us too. We actually saw this spike from just an overall volume perspective. We never see this many connections happen in an hour unless it's really going. And this is because this person just, hey, I'm here, social media, I'm actively so Glenn, I have a question for you about this. Since like we just talked about Mirai as a thing, we've counted IP addresses and connections associated with Mirai. Why is Mirai still a thing? Why haven't we just nuked all the Mirai devices from orbit?
I mean, once there's so much embedded, right? Like their targeting was, if I'm remembering right, like DVR, like such specialized appliances, and people are just able to not update them, and they live forever, and they just continue to do their job. In addition to being a botnet, people don't care or notice.
I'll be a little more jaded than you. My call is that nation states use the same bad stuff that bad people do. So if we
Yeah.
got rid of all the Mirai devices, then we wouldn't have stuff to use. None of the good guys would have stuff to use. But that's just me being jaded. It's interesting you say what you said because a common misconception for a lot of folks is that Mirai is made up of like cameras or
Hmm.
DVRs or whatever. And you're going to see towards the end that maybe that's not the case. Actually, it isn't the case, but you'll see at the end that it isn't the case. So, like the hypothesis is fine because a lot of other people had it. That's what it was. I've got a Mirai camera sitting around here that I owe one of our researchers as a present, but it's not necessarily only those devices. But speaking of devices, so this it's okay. First of all, if anyone's watching this and knows me for the past like 2 decades, yes, I have like an IP pew pew map. It's and I'm sorry, but it's one of the only ways to really show a small-ish number of IP addresses in a geographical or a visual way. We're working on other ways of doing that. We actually have a cool couple projects in flight, but I wanted to just show that Mirai's basically all over the world in a lot of mostly residential networks, but not only those. We'll see that too. And I just wanted to give you all a scope of like 10,000 IP addresses hitting us constantly with this weird, stupid new attack it's doing. Looks like from a distribution perspective. Uh, any comments about the map, Glenn, or questions about the map?
I mean, my eyes are kind of drawn towards the very center. That little river right there in the on the top of the African continent seems to be a little brighter than other areas.
Yeah, I mean, it just could be the nature of the effect of the. Well, actually, let's go back a little bit. So,
Mhm.
Mirai is a botnet, and they are devices that are vulnerable to various CVEs that are out there. And like when you try to make more members of the botnet, it's just using those CVEs exploits, trying to make those members of there. And generally speaking, Mirai is rented out by various entities. So this person may have just gotten the luck of the draw for each one of these that they were doing. So I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of, you know, emphasis on that one little blurb that you're talking like this, it's right there, right? That's what you're talking about.
I don't think I can see your mouse,
Oh, my
but
mouse. Yeah,
I
there
was
you
talking
go.
about like in Egypt. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
gotcha. So I wouldn't really say that like they were like really looking at those devices there. I guess what I would say is there's just a lot of vulnerable kit across
Hmm.
all of these devices at all these places, all these residential networks. And I would admonish all of our listeners to keep your stuff updated at home, but I already know they do because they're watching this, video podcast thingy, whatever this is.
It does look
So
like
like
Montana and North Dakota are in the clear, though.
because nobody lives there. But anyway, sorry about that. Apologies to all Montanans or North Dakotans. I live in a state that nobody lives in either. I live in Maine, so like I hear you. I want to talk about the autonomous system view because that's really where you know whether something is residential or not. If anyone looks at your honeypot logs or just other logs that you have, like you see, you recognize every single one of these things. What I wanted to show for Glenn, though, since he made that really daft hypothesis that they're all just like devices. Sorry, Glenn. But the Amazon, this is absolutely not hosting devices. These are actual servers in Amazon's network that are compromised by Mirai and are just like spewing stuff out, burning people's EC2 credits or dollars or pennies or whatever they're doing with those. But this is the top 15. They account for about 75% of the traffic that we saw. And the one thing I also wanted to mention is that we may have seen around like 10,000 unique IP addresses, but the reality is that these networks outside of like most, and I'm not being derogatory, like outside of most first world countries, ones that have like decent, large, well built up, maintained internet presences, which means definitely not here because that would be Comcast and whatever we're gonna do. But anyway, they have really short lease times on their IP addresses. So a camera or a router or something else might get reassigned an IP address, and we'll see a different one the very next day, or sometimes even like the next hour, depending on the region that it's in. Not to do like a sales pitch, but it's not really a sales pitch because like you can use it without buying anything. One reason why our hourly block lists mean a lot is just because of this. These low lease times and the fact that a lot of these pieces of equipment are getting regularly updated leases from wherever networks they're on means that you need to stay more up to date than what most feeds can actually kind of give you out there. I think that's all I got on. And finally, so thanks to Census, love Census,
Absolutely.
great data partners with us. I want to give them all a big hug for what they did. They really helped out. We gave them a bunch of the IP addresses, and I asked them for, hey, what's your scan data show for all these things? Now we have a secret project internally that I can't talk about today. That I also validated our results against their results, which we'll talk about in the coming weeks. So our results came up with a little less because Census is really, really good at what they do, and we're not a scanner, we're a listener, but we're getting there. And around 2,000 of the devices did have things running on them that could be probed by Census. They also look for so much stuff. Look at all the stuff that they scan for. So this is a breakdown of what the services were, and I can give you folks a better breakdown if you want. Just like drop us an email, research at graynoise.io, and we'll be glad to talk about this more in depth. But the reality is, like, these are device profiles are running all sorts of things between like admin interfaces, web servers, telnet, so it's probably routers, all sorts of things. Anything surprise you about this particular chart, Glenn?
I mean, I never see a chart with Telnet and not feel surprised, even though that's probably the definition of insanity, right? But anyway.
I think I'm the definition of insanity, but that's go back to the main screen here. Actually, we have one more. Actually, maybe this is an important one. So we not only listen for stuff and watch for stuff and have signatures for stuff, detection rule tags, you might see them in our interface. Uh, Remy, Matthew Remical, in case people know him by his more like British like full name, but Remy, one of the coolest people on the planet, one of the smartest folks on the planet, uh, grabbed the binaries for this to see what was in there and what was going on. And I thought people might want to take a look at some of that as well too. So he threw it in one of the fancy, cool detection engineering, the tools that rips apart source code or the binaries and translates it back. And for folks out there, a couple things. If you do run Tenda devices, Netlog devices, LB link devices, or Zix, I can't pronounce. Glenn, how do you pronounce that?
Zixel, I believe. That's
Okay,
what happens in my head when I read it.
that's TMI. Okay, so the Remy found that this particular configuration of Mirai was actually looking for those things as well too. So we
Mhm.
have just pushed up today coverage for all of these that you see in there. So we'll be watching for these and maybe even doing an update on Stormwatch the next time around to see if we continue to see these. Now, remember, we are still seeing elevated levels of attempts at compromising Mirai devices over the same pattern that we saw last week. So I expect to see this going this week, and I expect to see activity on these as well.
Yeah. Something else that kind of took some headlines last week, which was also added to the Sysicov list, but in general was the Barracuda ESG Appliance. Um, so another product that if that's on your perimeter or on your used by your
Oh,
organization, to make sure that you are keeping that up because it is
so
definitely being targeted.
so that's the one where the Barracuda device would be scanning an attachment that came in, and the thing that tries to keep you safe wasn't built
Escapes.
well,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a
compromises you.
trend.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, we had something similar last fall with Zimbra. So it seems like it kind of is on a maybe a quarterly basis of a recurring here, but security appliances are certainly not immune. They're easy to set and forget. but they're certainly not immune, especially when you're talking about your security controls. So
Are they
something to
really
keep in
security
mind.
devices or more like insecurity devices? It's a difference.
Okay, all right.
But
Where's
well,
where's
no,
the
but
sound
in all
effect?
seriousness, infosec teams are some of the worst when it comes to maintaining the equipment they have. This is historical fact. I've seen it in many orgs. I do a lecture at Carnegie Mellon twice a year to a group of CISOs, and I let them know that every single thing you want to buy, like if you go to the RSA Expo floor, everyone buys you like a really nice dinner, and you want to buy all the things they have. Every single one of those things that you buy and install increases your attack surface. So even
Mhm.
though this Barracuda appliance, which is doing a good thing, it's trying to protect your email, it does increase, and in fact has in many organizations increased their attack surface too. So just remember that when you're going out to buy solutions, every single one you do has a trade-off of functionality versus actually increasing your attack surface too.
Yeah, there's a bit of a security tax on everything that you plug in, give it an IP, basically. Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Anything else happened last week that we did talk about, Glenn?
No, I will remind people about, at least for top of mind. I know that the one Mirai took up a lot of our time as we were chasing down to figure out what exactly we were seeing. But a quick reminder about viz.greynoise.io. There's a trending tab where you can kind of see what's trending up, malicious or non-malicious, for the day or the week, and look for net changes and stuff like that. So again, trying to keep the information as actual and focused as possible to drive positive action for our teams.
Cool. And like I said, we got notified internally, but also by folks in our community. So if you want to
Mhm.
join our Slack community, we can hit up
Like,
researcher at greynoise.io, and we can get hooked up with our Slack community as well too. So you can reach us directly. You can reach out and talk to Glenn 24/7. He's supposed to respond to all messages at all
oh
times of the day.
man,
So you can do that.
yeah, great plug. Yeah, we have a Slack instance that's just for our community. So
Best
uh,
community ever. The best.
yeah,
Absolute
so if
best.
you want to interact with like-minded folks, or even folks with a internally at Great Noise, or in similar positions, as you find yourself at your organization, at other organizations, there's really uh, no guardrails on what can be talked about there. So we want to help everyone help each other, as well as us help them as well.
Cool. That's all I got.
Nice.
Glenn, by you. Done?
I think that's a wrap for this week. The long holiday is certainly going to make for a short week, so that's pretty sweet too. And I believe I will have a much nicer co-host next week.
It wouldn't
So
take
I'm looking
much, honestly.
I'm looking forward to that. Yes. So it'll be me and not Bob next week.
Awesome.
We're gonna talk about whatever's happened this week, and we're gonna talk about some cool product things next week as well. A little teaser.
Nice. Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and catch you next time on Stormwatch.
Thanks.